Ah, can you see it?
I think we should be recording.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so back to the slides. So, like a couple of weeks ago, I wrote an RFC to propose a new command. The idea is to replicate region data from one site to another using one replication. This is a description of the problem. We would like to be able to replicate the region data from one site to another, and this is the use case. I mean, we have identified three cases in which we think this command would be very useful. One would be once you have a geode system, maybe without one replication, without geo redundancy, maybe you would like to add a new geode site. And in order to synchronize the new system with the current one, you will need something in Geode to put all the data in the regions in the original system in the new one. Another use case would be even if you already had a working geo-redundant Geode system running, maybe you run into a network split which is long enough that forces you to stop replication. So events are not queued anymore. I mean, you probably make that decision because you would be running out of maybe memory or disk. And once the network split is fixed, now you have to synchronize both sites. In our case, we were thinking about how to do this, and maybe, I mean, a simple option would be just to pick one of the sites as the winning one, and the other one would be the loser. So you would remove all the data from the loser one and try to put all the data from the winner site in the loser site, so that both sides are in sync again. And one third use case is when one site needs to be recovered after a failure. Maybe there's a very big problem in the site and everything goes down and you lose all the data. But when you want to recover that site, you want everything to work as expected. You want that site to have the same data as the original one. And this command we are proposing would be useful for solving that issue. What's the support that we have found in Geode today? We have the backup and restore commands. We have the import and export commands. And there's also this gem touch tool that we have found out about. And well, I will give you some information later, but you probably know, but anyway. The problem with these three options is that they have shortcomings. If we talk about backup and restore, one of the things it has, one of the issues it has for this use case, is that it only works with persistent regions. So if you want to take a backup from a non-persistent region, it's not possible according to the documentation. Also, it's not possible to support the restore of a backup to an older Geode system. That's something that could happen depending on the versions that your systems are running, and you would be in trouble if you want to restore a backup in an older system. These backup and restore commands cannot really guarantee the consistency across regions. Also, backup and restore does not guarantee transactions consistency because they write information to disk, and the information written in disk is not a transaction. I mean, it doesn't honor transactions. And one of the things that is one of the disadvantages of backup and restore, and I guess the other import and export, is that in order to use this backup and restore, assuming that we are using persistent regions and assuming that we will have these problems of consistency and so on, the process to recover one replication in a running system is very cumbersome, because you have to stop replication in the winning site, then you have to empty the replication queues, then you have to start replication again, then take the backup, but do not replicate to the other side. I mean, it's a cumbersome process. So it's not very easy, very friendly. Regarding import and export, it's similar in some senses to the backup and restore option. Consistency is not guaranteed unless it is run with, unless it is run, without traffic. This is according to documentation because it's based on region snapshot surveys. As backup and restore, it does not guarantee consistency across regions. The same with transactions. And the problems about how to recover the one replication are the same as, I would say, as with backup and restore. And then we have this third option, which is the GemTouch tool. It's an open source tool, which is not part of Geode, and it's in a GitHub repository, but it's no longer maintained. How does this tool work? Well, it goes to the region, it traverses the region, and for each entry in the region, it performs a put with the original value, and that put is going to fire the replication of the entry. So in the end, if you have gone through all the entries in the region, in theory, you will have replicated all those entries in the other side, and you would have achieved your goal. One disadvantage this tool has is that it updates the timestamp of the entries. So this could be an issue when you have one replicated system with more than 2 sites, because there could be, there could be overriding of entries by this replication if there are concurrent, more or less concurrent writes for the same entry. And also, there are race conditions when traffic is not transactional and you are running traffic and you are running at the same time. This tool, we have run we have run some tests, and we have really verified that sometimes this replication, this tool can overwrite traffic writes that it shouldn't, unless you are using transactions in your traffic, in which case you are safe. Okay, so these are the tools we have found in Geode. So as none of them really suited our needs, we thought about an alternative, and we thought about proposing to implement a new command or function to replicate the data from one region to another using a gateway sender. The way this function, which would be invoked from one command, the way it would work is as follows. It would go for each region entry, and it would create a replication event and put that event in the replication queue as if there had been a real put, but actually there's no put. I mean, in this sense, this tool is similar to how GemTouch functions, but this tool would not do a real put. It would just create a put equivalent to the one that was generated when the put was done. In order to be safe, in order to be able to stop this replication just in case something goes wrong, we expect that this tool, this function, has or offers the possibility to be stopped using a command. And also to be in the safe side, because maybe sometimes this could create some issues with, I don't know, maybe with the ongoing traffic or with memory and so on. We would propose that this tool would be able to adapt the replication rate. There would be several options. We have not picked one because we would like to discuss with the community which would be best, if any. So maybe the tool could allow you to specify a maximum rate, I don't know, maybe 1,000 entries per second, for example. Or maybe the tool would be able to adapt the replication rate depending on the queue's size, the replication size, or how they are growing, and so on. So this is more or less the summary, very shortly, the proposal. And in this last slide, I wanted to highlight some of the concerns that have already been shown in the emails and in the RFC. For example, Barrett was talking about how to deal with duplicates, with missing events, with ordering issues, with concurrent modifications. Well, we can discuss that later. We could have some issues with conflation if we have concurrent writes at the same time as we are replicating data with this tool. Also, there could be side effects by running this tool while there is traffic going on. We could expect that the memory taken by enqueued events, if Geode is not able to replicate fast enough, could be an issue, or maybe the receivers would not be able to cope with the traffic and also with the replication events. So there must be some mechanisms to protect this, to protect the system against some undesired situations. I think Udo was also talking about how to deal with bidirectional synchronization. Actually, at least in our proposal, this was not something we wanted to fix. We were not thinking about some command or tool that would synchronize to regions or to one replicated sites that had data in them. I mean, that would be awesome, of course, but we thought that that would be a very complex problem to solve. So I would say that that's out of the scope of this proposal. Of course, we are open to discuss if it makes sense to make maybe a not so ambitious proposal, or we want to go further. Also, I think it was Udo who was talking about how to detect that there is some need for synchronization. Again, I think this is out of the scope of the original RFC, because the RFC is for for situations well known that we want to add a new one site, or we want to recover from a disaster. So there is no need for some automatic detection mechanism. And I think Anthony was also, or maybe, I don't know if it was Anthony or Udo was also thinking that maybe there would be other mechanisms more suited for this task than using the replication queues, because maybe they are not really well suited for this task. And this is it, more or less. We can discuss now if what do you think about the proposal? What do you think about these issues? If they are worth all of them to be tackled, or anything. So that would be it from my side for now. I don't know if you want me to keep the presentation open, or
Probably fine just focusing on this people talking right now, right?
Okay.
So do we just want to work down the list of open topics that you've already called out?
Sure.
So I know there were some issues around the duplication where data that already was enqueued in the regular replication queue, and then you start the additional replication process. It sounds like that might just result in additional work, but not necessarily in duplicate entries on the other side.
Yeah, I haven't. Well, maybe I don't know if Barrett is in the meeting. He was the one who suggested these possible problems. We have not found in our tests or in theory problems with duplications, because we are thinking about replicating into a region which is empty. So about missing events, I'm not sure about what he meant by that. Concurrent modifications, well, maybe in that case, I guess we could be safe with the timestamps Geode is using, but maybe there could be an issue there. I don't know. Ordering issues, not sure.
I can talk about some of that.
Okay. Oh, great.
It's Barry. Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah. So you'll definitely see duplicates, and you'll definitely see concurrent cache mods. I mean, there's that you can run a test and prove that pretty easily if you just do a test with a bunch of put-alls and then call your function. I use my function, the one I posted there, that does pretty much what you talked about, and I see both of those things. Now, I do think that the concurrent cache mod is okay because it does. If you use the version stamps that are on the entries, it'll if they arrive out of order, it'll see that and drop it. The listeners get invoked for the case where they're the same event. So if it's duplicates, you'll see 2 listener events for the same event. But you can mitigate that too by there's an enable cache or enable listener or something Boolean that you can attach to the event that'll handle that, or at least you'll see. So that the ones that you send from your function, you want to turn that off so it doesn't even call the listeners. Another way you can think about handling that is to put positive default to true on yours. Another thing you could do, and this gets a lot harder, is to do a kind of version of GII, or get initial image, from the sending side. You can you can make your function as if the receiving side said, "Hey, give me an initial image of whatever region it's asking for," and then you can do all the GII stuff, which will get up a bunch of batches and do all the state flush stuff, so everything's consistent that it's sending across. That would probably, yeah, you want to do that on a bucket though. That's the only problem with that, is you have to do it per bucket, and I'm not sure if that's how you want to do this, or if you just want to force every primary, say, and send it down.
So
yeah,
so in that case,
it's pretty interesting. I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff you could do with this, but I know I like that that idea rather than doing an iterator on the region. But it gets more complex that way. You're talking about throttling. You're going to have it's going to be even more so if you have throttling turned on in terms of duplicates. And another thing you can look at is stopping and queuing at the time you're doing this thing, and then everything's coming from your function rather than through the queue as well. Then you got to, I haven't thought this through too much, but it would be like GII again, though. You'd have to use the GII version of it because you'd miss stuff if you did it with an iterator. The GII with state flush gets everything as it's happening. That's what the state flush does. It makes sure that everything that's happening, you get it. Yeah, the problem with that, though, as soon as you stop, you have to make sure that it gets in queued. Yeah, it would be really tough. So turning off in queuing is going to be tough. It'd be ideal.
I think that's
really
would be the same problem as if using import and export, backup and restore. How do you start replication? I mean, you start from something.
No, you don't. It's the same. It's the same problem. Import export is actually, this thing to me seems more like just an export. I mean, that's basically all it is, but you're exporting it from the site rather than from a file, or exporting from your site and it's being imported over the other site. So it's kind of the same thing. It's the same thing because all that does is iterate and create a file for it.
Barry, you called out a few interesting ideas there, like using some of our existing replication between members. GII for everyone is called get initial image. It's like a shorthand for how a new member converges to the state of an existing member when it needs to have the same exact data in the face of concurrent modifications. That's a hard problem. And the good thing is already have some stuff there. But I think that the main thing you're calling out in this approach would be a pull model instead of a push model. And that's, I mean, maybe there's different ways to think about, or different implementations we could use for a pull instead of a push, and some trade-offs, you know, around that. The push model is interesting because, you know, much of the mechanisms are already in place, but there are some downsides to it. You know, just in managing the impact to the existing workloads. One other point I wanted to interject briefly, though, is that the problem that Alberto is focused on here is something that our users are interested in and have been interested in. So it's really just like trying to find a balance of how we can help them with this problem without giving them a foot gun to do something bad with.
Yeah, I think turning off the duplicates is a good thing. For if this is going to be a shotgun, execute a function and it iterates through all the entries and does a distribution to the sender, which, if that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah, I was going to ask you.
Yeah, don't fire listener events on the other side. Set positive to true. And you'll get duplicates and you'll get stuff that's out of order, but hopefully it'll be handled. Hopefully. Pretty sure that's true. In my testing, like I said, I tested with my function that I posted that does this. And I saw duplicates. I turned them off, and I didn't update the function, but I turned it off to not do that. And I don't see any of those duplicates anymore. I don't know. I didn't like extensively test this stuff, but I've used that function a lot in a like a startup and no activity, run the function, and the sites are the same afterwards. It's pretty easy, right? You know, if there's nothing going on, it's no big deal. You just have to worry a little bit when there is stuff going on. You might have to worry about failures. I don't know if you're gonna, like, if one member crashes while it's replicating, you'll have to rerun the function against some other member. I don't know if you're going to do it against all the primaries, like optimize for right equals true. I don't know if that's what where you're going with this, or you're just going to do it against one member. Then you have to get everything into that one member. So you might want to parallelize it.
I mean, we have a prototype for that, and we have a different implementation for the parallel and for the serial one, and for partitioning, partition and replicated, and for partition regions. You want to run this in the primary and in the secondary, because
both.
Yeah, because that's the way it works right now. If you do a put, the event goes to the primary and to the secondary. Because if the primary, queue goes down, then you will have the events on the secondary.
Right. So you're going to do it like an on servers call and get the primaries, actually get everything and dump it into the queue, into its queues, and it'll be primaries and secondaries. Wow, exactly. That's cool. That's doubling or tripling or whatever the replication redundancy is. It'll be doubling the traffic. No, actually, it won't. It'll just be doubling the stuff in the queue. That's not a big deal.
Yeah, exactly. So you will be queuing twice, just in regular puts, but the batches will think. And for the serial ones, you will run it on the primary, of course.
Yeah. I mean, in general, I like the idea. I think it's great. I think it'd be great to have this. I'm just worried about. I put missing events. I'm not 100% sure that'll happen. I was thinking about that in the context of not queuing stuff. But I think if you're iterating through and doing an iterator and you're iterating through entries, if something comes in behind that, you've missed it, right? But
you would have the replication running.
Queue. That'll get into the queue normally, so you probably are okay there.
Yeah, the only thing we have seen maybe with conflation, maybe if there is some race condition, maybe you could write something, and maybe when it gets to the queue, the replication, when you replicate that same entry, if that happens at the same time. So maybe we would have to do some things in conflation just to take into account the timestamps
Yeah, you
We
might
have
want to.
also a prototype for that.
Yeah, you might want to turn off conflation while you're doing this, and then turn it back on or something.
Yeah, that would be another way if we don't.
That's a
start
more brute
conflation.
force kind of stuff, but you could do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you something about, because Udo was thinking about something much bigger, more ambitious, and I think it would be great also, yeah, to have just some tool that looks at both two sites and says, okay, these two sites are out of sync, synchronize. I don't know how to solve that problem. I have no idea. Because it's a running system, there's lots of operations going on both sides, so I don't think that can be solved, at least to my knowledge. So if we can agree at least that we go for this less ambitious approach, which is solving, I think, very useful use cases, at least for us. And I think Anthony said that you have customers also who are interested in solving this
you'll
problem.
have to test that.
Of
Test
course.
what happens when you have hot, two sides putting at each other, and make sure that events that you get in one site that were originated from the other site, when you send them back to that site, what happens to them? I don't know. I mean, that you definitely want to make sure
Is that to
that
guard against a catastrophic failure, even if we don't want to fully support that scenario, Barry?
what's that?
Oh,
Alexander?
Barry's suggesting to test for that scenario to make sure that that if someone uses that in the use case where they're not supposed to, that we won't have catastrophic outcomes, even if we
Yeah,
don't.
I mean, that's what I think so. You just want to make sure you're not losing events, or there's some exception that happens that breaks the send. Yeah, you don't want to break the sender, right?
Yeah,
Sending the gateway sender dispatchers, that thread, if you don't want to break that. So yeah, that would be a good thing to test, at least to see that it doesn't do that. And
I think one thing to call out here is that a lot of people use WAN not just as a primary and a backup, like a one-way replication, but they may have like active systems where it's bidirectional. We also have seen users that do things like spoke and hub models where there's like a central and then lots of secondary systems getting data, or even like spoken hub or star patterns, and others have like I guess it's more of a circle pattern where it like goes around the globe to major cities in the world and flows events all around. So some things to think about as you design some tests for this kind of scenario.
Are you expecting the events that the remote site receives to also be forwarded to other sites?
Well, actually, to make things simple, we were thinking about, while the replication is ongoing, the receiving side to not receive any traffic, because otherwise things get more complex. So that would be a restriction.
Traffic. You mean turn off the receiver?
No. The receiver would be working, but there would be no direct operations other than the receiver ones.
Attached.
Yeah, because you are starting a system, you are recovering one system, or you are starting it from scratch in order to put it into the host system. So maybe that's a restriction that can be accepted for this use case, of course, because otherwise
I wouldn't know. But I mean, if I call this thing on a sender on you, if I call this on you, I'm on you and I call it and I'm trying to replicate to Dan, and Dan is like happily accepting clients and doing its thing, how would you know that he's what state he's in? You'd have to send a message to him and he'd have to respond back to you and said, hey, I'm in a state where you can send me this thing. Wow, that'd be cool, but we don't have any kind of mechanism like that, No,
but I mean, imagine you have just one Geode site and you want to upgrade it with another one. I mean, the new one would not be known by the clients until you advertise it. So in that time, you're going to replicate all the data. And when your command has finished, you would say, okay, this is a one replicated system. You can connect to this one and to this one. So that would be the idea. Because if we want to tackle the other problem, because also the other, I mean, the site receiving the events, how would you know that it's fully functional. It's getting the data from the other side. So maybe the data it has is not complete. So why would you be allowing that one to be used by clients, until it's not fully received the data from the other side? So
Your
maybe that's a
command is
restriction.
to know that, though. I mean, you're just, all you're saying is, hey, replicate this region. That's all really you're saying, right? Because it's going to be attached to a sender already. What if it's attached to a bunch of senders? Do you want to send just one or all of them? I mean,
You could send all of them.
You could, or okay. So how do you know the remote state of those remote sites? You just don't. You have no idea. I don't know if this is a big deal. I think we might be going down the weeds too much a little bit, but
I wonder if there's a difference here in the expected user experience. I wonder if you, Barry, expect that all that would happen automatically, and if you expect, Alberto, that the operator would ensure that that is true, and if they make a mistake, then they have a problem.
Well, if they have a problem, we have a problem, right? Because they're going to tell us, hey, my site is all messed up. You need to fix it, right? So
absolutely. So we got to figure out maybe what user experience is the one we want. I wonder if in general it would help if the anti-goal section in the RFC was a little bit more fleshed out to call out what is not part of this proposal. I think that would have helped avert the discussions about active-active replication, for example.
Yeah, if the remote site is like a basic just started site, and we say that's what a requirement is, then this makes this a lot easier. I mean,
yeah, that would be our initial idea. But in the end, when you have finished, you would have bidirectional replication. You could have bidirectional replication.
So, but I still have the same question I had a few minutes ago was, so say it, and it comes from what Anthony said. If I'm attached to you, Alberto, and you're attached to Anthony, and Anthony's attached to me, I send my stuff to you.
Okay.
With the function, what do you do with it? Do you send it to Anthony?
I think I shouldn't send it to Anthony. I should protect. I mean, the sender side should make sure that I'm not re-forwarding those data. And I think there's a way. I forgot. We did it in the prototype. I forgot now how we did it.
Yeah, it would be like the initial image put stuff with GII. It's just a put local. There's no listeners or any of that. I think that's how you do it. I think you just disable that Boolean. I think you can set that to false. It'll just ignore. It won't send it to any listeners or any WAN stuff, anything. I think that's true.
Yeah.
But you could, Anthony, did you suggest having a different operation type?
Oh yeah, that could be.
Because you could do that too, and then you could control that much better. That'd be cool too. Of course, then you have to change the gateway stuff to handle that. The receiver wouldn't know what that is, and the sender wouldn't know how to handle that. And I don't know if
maybe we could reuse one of the existing ones, which would be not exactly like a regular put replicated, but something else. I saw there's like some local put or something like that in the enums, but I haven't investigated it so much. So maybe we could reuse and not change the protocol, not add another type.
Yeah, I'm just not sure if it knows how to handle anything like that, like a local load create kind of.
Yeah, I think I used local load and it worked just the same way.
Great. Okay. So, good.
Regarding.
I was going to say, it seems like we've talked a lot about the duplications and so on. Do we want to move on to talk about the side effects like memory taken up and queue lengths?
Yep.
Anthony, I think you had some concerns that this seemed more prone to take the cluster down than the GemTouch solution. And I think you, Alberto, had some questions about why that is that didn't get answers in the thread.
Yeah.
Do you want to?
I think it was Anthony. You said that this approach had some disadvantages that GemTouch didn't have, but I didn't really get it.
I'm probably not the the most accurate person to answer, but I'll do my best. What I was potentially concerned about was, you know, putting events under the queue could put the system under heat pressure. Maybe things get evicted. It changes the runtime characteristics, perhaps. In a model where we're doing putts, there's a different profile because now we're, like you pointed out, I think we're doing more data replication for no reason. But there is a mechanism that if you do go over a critical threshold, you'll stop being able to write. So maybe that's not I think maybe in both cases there's some trade-offs to consider. Overall, to me, the question is really like, do we want to do this in process inside Gemfire, or do we want to do it out of process as a side tool? That's a really interesting question. So let me just sketch out what that might like. I think you've sketched out the how we do it in process fairly well, and I'll just share a brief idea here. So one idea would be, we already have a snapshot export mechanism, which is fairly similar to kind of, at least in terms of data consistency and things like that, in terms of the approach that you're suggesting. But one thing we could do is with those exported snapshots, we could write a tool that then spins through and pushes them off to the remote systems, does a read on the file and then does a put, off to the local or to the remote cluster as a sidecar. And the advantage there is the operator has complete control over that. And I'm not sure, I haven't really even thought about, whether that's a good option or what the trade-offs are, but just a different way of thinking about how we want to allow the user to get their job done easier than with the export-import command.
You want to make that a client of the remote site?
Sure, just make it a client and do a put all or something.
Right, no queuing, just put alls or.
Yeah, and it goes at the rate of whatever machine is doing the read and remote puts. So different technologies, but I don't know.
Yeah, problem I see with that approach is the same as we saw with import and export. How do you reconcile that with ongoing traffic which is being replicated? I mean, if you could be overriding, if you use that approach, you could be overriding current writes that are being replicated. So, or you would have to stop replication for some time. But then when do you start it? So again, it's a very difficult problem to know exactly when to do every step. While on the other side, everything goes to the queue. So, okay, I think that's all for us.
Does export import, does that store doesn't store the version tag?
No, it doesn't.
It's just the key and the value. Yeah, then you're gonna have to really worry about duplicates because you will get them. You get stuff out of order. Yeah. That I don't. Yeah, it's not. You're gonna have to worry about that kind of stuff a lot more without the version tag.
Yeah.
But we've already got part of that mechanism. That's kind of cool. I mean, we could add to it. If we add the version tag to it, would that be a problem? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Dan, do you have any thoughts on running sort of in process and having maybe less to worry about with managing data in the queues versus running outside and having less operational concerns?
Well, I think, I guess I would probably be inclined to go with staying in process with the queues, kind of like it's proposed. To be perfectly honest, like I think it is the tricky part is handling those concurrent updates again, right? Like we need to make sure that we always keep the latest value. So I think what the current solution is doing is it's using the WAN conflict checks to essentially accomplish that, right? It seems like we're saying we might put stuff in the queues out of order, but we're going to keep the version tag of the original entry so that if an older entry is in the queue last, we keep the newer entry that came first, right? So I think that's probably easier to do with the queues, but I'm not. I can see arguments either way. I think the memory issue is a concern. I do think we could do. You could definitely implement something where you have like a maximum queue size or maximum number of entries that you're allowed to put in with the queue-based approach. I was a little bit concerned. I think earlier you mentioned, okay, the primaries and the secondaries are going to be writing in the queues at the same time. I'm not sure how well that's going to work. I think that'll probably come out in the testing, right? Like, so one question is like, how quickly are they going to fill up the queues, right? Because if you're just streaming all the data from the primary, without having to spend the time replicating the secondary, you could probably fill up the queue really fast, right? And so you're definitely going to run out of memory quickly there if you're not waiting for those responses to the secondary. So then you're going to need a throttling mechanism for sure. That's one concern. The other concern would be that the way it works right now, I think, is that the primary generates a sequence number, and that's actually the key. I think that ends up associated with that event, right? And that's like I don't know if it's the key in the queue region but it's definitely part of that entry in the queue region.
It is.
And the current design is that basically the same event should have the same sequence number in the primary and the secondary, right? So that's a problem if you were having each of the primaries and secondaries dumping into the queues independently. So that's another concern I was having.
Yep. That Dan brings up a great point. It's what you're thinking of won't work at all because you'll have different events for the same event, basically with different keys in the queue. What you'll need to do, what I've done in the past, is have a primary kind of a function and a secondary kind of a function, and you do the work in the primary to create the event and all that. You put that in the local queue. You call the secondary function, send that event, or at least the event ID, over to the secondary. The event ID and the key, shadow key it's called, or tail key, different contexts. Send that over to the secondary function. It creates the event with those things, and it puts it in the queue, and you get the same event with the same event ID and the same tail key for the same key and value in the primary and secondary. I have a Medium article on doing, I call it routing to async event queues, but it's the same exact same thing. So yeah, it's actually pretty tricky. But it'll work if you get the same. The problem with if you don't have the same key for the same event, when you send the primary side, it's going to say, hey, you can destroy these keys out of the secondary queue, and it's going to just destroy some random keys that aren't the keys that you've put already, right? So that's why you need to have the same. Yeah, boy. So I'm sorry I didn't think about this earlier. Yeah, that's why you need to have the same key.
I hadn't thought about this either.
Yeah.
Good point, Dan.
Yeah. My function didn't do the secondaries; it just did the primaries. So.
But if you don't do the secondaries, you could have issues.
No, I understand. I think you want to do. I think doing the secondaries is a good idea, but you're going to have to do it differently than you're thinking.
Okay. Yeah. Good point. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, kind of to Anthony's question, like I think there's different levels of things we can do, right? I think like Udo is proposing something much fancier than what you're proposing. I think Anthony's proposing something simpler than, like so. Each one is like either we do more work or the operator does more work, right? I think so. I don't necessarily have. I guess I don't have a strong opinion, but I guess it's kind of how much work we want to throw at the operator. I do like the idea that this is a little less work for the operator. They say like synchronize my data over there rather than having to do the other stuff. But If you find it's too hard to work with the queues, then maybe that other solution is easy. We'd still have to modify the snapshot service, I think, to have the timestamps, but I guess that's possible.
Yeah, even thinking about this issue with the primaries and secondaries, we could, I mean, making things simple, we could assume, okay, we're going to work on just the primaries, assuming that if anything goes wrong, well, we will retry.
It's a lot easier
Yeah, because
than all this stuff I was just talking about.
We need to keep things simple, because otherwise it's really hard to test, and we're going to put a lot of noise in the code. So I'm in favor of doing things simple, you know.
Of course, you have to make sure you test that, right? As you run the function, just kill one of the members that's running and make sure it fails over to another permanent. What happens in that case? Because you're going to restart, so then you'll have even more events. But yeah, but that you definitely want to make sure it fails over. Which it should. It's just function execution. I think that fails over automatically, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So, Barry, let me throw out another weird question. Have you worked with any users that have had this issue and then used a custom client that reads from one cluster and pushes to the other cluster?
Yeah, I've done that. Yeah, absolutely. I've done that with both with verification of two WAN sites, where you have one client that's connected to both, and I've done get, update, put to the other one. Yeah. It's not easy because there's a couple. It's not easy at all because we don't support having one client connected to two pools. What you don't have is the region can't be talking to two pools. The client region. If you could swap out a pool easily in a region, it would be really simple to do this. You know, you just point the region at one pool, do the get, change the region's pool to another pool, do the put, you know, or whatever you're doing. I mean, that'd be really, really simple. But you have to do things like create server region proxy directly, which is the thing the client talks to point to the other site. So you want the client doing one site normally, and the other site's using this SRP, or you close the cache and open the cache, changing the pool in the middle. You can do both of those things. That's cool too. We've done both of those things. You could do it that way. That's another way to do it. Get put. I mean, it's going to be a lot slower, but it'll get the memory issue out of the sender.
How does it work?
Patch them too. You could get all and put all. You could do a query or something. Get all the keys. Something to get all the keys on server. Do we have that still? And then get all, put all, get all, put all, get all, put all.
Yeah.
You have to deal with the version tags again, which you wouldn't have. So I'm not sure if that would work. But that's another idea. That's a great idea to look into.
I mean,
we've done everything in POCs, Anthony.
I know you have. I think, you could also try a CQ to keep in sync with concurrent updates, but I think that does get complicated. And then you probably have some weird squirrely things to think about with PDX types and keeping those different type registries in sync.
Yeah, that's the other thing with this client. You have to get all the PDX types to the other site before you start all this, otherwise you could get yourself in trouble. Yeah, that's right. A lot of things to think about with all these different ideas.
Yeah, my role here is just to throw out bad ideas. So
that's a good idea. It's just
we would like a prototype for each bad idea, just in case. To have to have, because otherwise it's hard. Let's see what else.
I think the fact that we've tried a lot of these bad ideas definitely shows this is something that people want, right? Like customers need to copy data from one site to another.
Absolutely, no doubt.
Okay.
It seems like we're almost out of time here. Alberto, did you have Any other topics on the RFC you wanted to follow up on?
No, the thing is, I don't know how to continue now. We have many more ideas, some more things that we hadn't thought about. So maybe I could, well, I could add some more information in the RFC to just to say what is out of the scope of the RFC. I mean, my aim would be to fix the issue we have right now, the problem. So maybe it's not too ambitious and too simple for people, but I think we need to build something that solves our customers' problem. And yeah, I think it's great that you have thrown all these ideas and also these things that we hadn't thought about. And I don't know, maybe I could create a pull request, a draft pull request with what we have today, and so that you can take a look at it and find some more things to fix. I don't know if that works for you. Or you prefer text, but I mean, our prototype is quite small, so it's not something that would be okay. I'm not going to read so much code. It's something simple. It should be fixed. So I prefer some draft code so that you can look at it.
Code's better.
Okay.
I think.
Great.
Cool. Another topic I'm curious about is scenarios that you think are in your test plan right now, and that you want to make sure to cover there. And how, because this is a tough feature, I think, as we see from the discussion.
Yeah. Maybe you should put that in the RFC, a bunch of test case scenarios.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right, so it seems like we have next step on this topic. I have a next step that I want to have someone take, which is, I think this was a great meeting, and I hope we can do it again. Anyone interested in hosting the next session next month? See what updates the notes, send out the invites on the mailing list, and moderates the session a little bit. Well, I'll see if I can share the summary of this and the video on the mailing list, and maybe someone with a little bit of more time to think about it can volunteer there to host the next session. Right. Thank you all so much, especially Alberto, for presenting.
Thank you.
It was really great to put some faces to names you usually just see in emails or on pull requests. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Talk to you.
Thank you. Sounds great.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.